Tonight, the night settles gently around a small, forgotten village, where a single bell has rung for generations its low, steady voice said to keep unseen terrors beyond the hills. Some swear the sound makes the darkness hesitate. Others believe it reminds the monsters that humans are still awake, still watching. But on this night, the bell has cracked, and its voice is no longer whole. Before we begin, take a moment to like this story, subscribe for more calm tales like this one, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from, whether it's late evening in the US, early morning in Europe, or a quiet hour in Canada, or somewhere else in the world. Let me know what time it is for you right now. Settle your body, slow your breathing, and allow the day to drift away, because our story is about to begin. The village of Harthwick lay in a shallow valley where fog liked to rest, especially at dusk. Stone cottages leaned close together as if sharing warmth, their roofs dark with moss and age. At the center of it all stood the bell tower, short, thick and stubborn, built from grey blocks smoothed by centuries of rain and wind. The bell inside it was older than memory, older than the oldest story told by the fire. It rang every night at sunset, once at midnight, and once again just before dawn. No one questioned this rhythm. It was as natural as breathing. When the bell rang, doors were bolted gently, not in panic but in habit. Lamps were lowered, voices softened. Children were guided to bed with murmured reassurances that the bell was awake, even if they were not. Its sound rolled across the fields like a deep sigh, slow and steady, seeping into the trees and the hollows beyond. People said the monsters, if that was even the right word, did not like reminders. They preferred silence, forgotten places, and unguarded thoughts. The bell, with its unwavering voice, reminded the dark that Harthwick was claimed. On the evening the crack appeared, the sky was painted in muted purples and ash-blue clouds. The bell ringer, old Thomas Hale, climbed the tower steps as he always had, his knees aching in familiar places. He pulled the rope with calm strength, and the sound that followed was wrong, not loud, not sharp, just uneven. The bell's note wavered, trembling as though it had caught its breath too late. A faint, broken echo followed, like a whisper lagging behind a word. Tomas froze, hands still wrapped in the rope, heart thudding slowly but firmly in his chest. Below, villagers paused mid-step. A woman standing at her doorway felt a chill brush her arms. A dog lifted its head and whined softly. Somewhere, far beyond the fields, something shifted in the dark, not toward the village, not away from it, but awake. The bell had spoken, and for the first time it had stumbled. After the bell's uneven voice faded into the evening air, the village did not erupt into fear. Not yet. Harthwick was a place shaped by patience, and patience does not break easily. Instead, a quiet unease moved gently from person to person, like a breeze slipping through open sleeves. Old Tomas stood alone in the tower for a long moment, listening to the silence that followed the bell's final tremor. Usually, the sound lingered, felt in the chest, in the stones, in the bones. Tonight, it vanished too quickly, as if swallowed. He placed his palm against the bell's cool surface and felt it there, a thin fracture running like a pale vein through dark metal. He said nothing as he climbed down. Below, the village resumed its slow routines. Pots were set on hearths, curtains were drawn. A mother tucked her child in and hummed a tune older than the words that once went with it. Yet something had changed. The air felt thinner. Sounds carried oddly, footsteps too loud, the creak of wood too sharp. At the edge of the fields, where tall grass bent and whispered, the fog thickened earlier than usual. It curled low to the ground, patient and deliberate, as though listening. An owl called once, then fell silent, unsettled by its own echo. In the cottage nearest the forest line lived Myra Fenn, who had always been sensitive to sounds others missed. She paused while washing her hands, water dripping slowly back into the basin. Somewhere beneath the ordinary noises of night, the wind, the distant stream, she thought she heard a second rhythm. Not footsteps, not breathing, just a sense of waiting. The midnight bell did not ring that night. No rope was pulled. No note rolled across the valley. The tower stood quiet, its shadow heavy and unfamiliar. Some villagers woke without knowing why, staring into the dark with calm but alert eyes. Others dreamed of doors left slightly open, of lanterns dimmed too low. Far beyond the village, something that had long learned to retreat at the sound of the bell did not retreat at all. It simply listened, patient as stone, as the night deepened without its warning voice. And Hearthwick, wrapped in fog and old belief, slept and unaware that silence could be louder than any sound. Dawn arrived quietly, almost apologetically, as though unsure it was welcome. Pale light slid over the hills and into the valley, touching the roofs of Hearthwick with cool fingers. Usually, the bell's pre-dawn ring greeted the morning low, steady, reassuring. Today, there was only birdsong, hesitant at first, then slowly gaining confidence. Villagers noticed the absence in small ways. A baker paused before lighting his oven, waiting for a sound that never came. A shepherd stood at the edge of the road with his staff resting in the dirt, listening. The morning felt unfinished, like a sentence without its final word. Old Thomas emerged from his cottage later than usual. His face looked carved from deeper lines, his eyes thoughtful. When asked about the bell, he simply nodded and said it had grown tired, as old things sometimes do. The explanation settled gently over the village, though it did not fully stick. Near the well, people gathered with buckets and soft voices. Someone mentioned a dream of shadows standing just beyond the fields. Another laughed lightly and blamed heavy supper and restless sleep. No one spoke of monsters. That word was rarely used in daylight. Myra Fenn walked the path that curved toward the forest, carrying herbs wrapped in cloth. She felt watched not by eyes, but by attention, a subtle pressure like the air before rain. The trees stood closer together than she remembered, their branches weaving shadows that seemed to shift when she looked away. By midday, Thomas climbed the tower again, this time with tools and careful hands. He examined the crack, tracing it slowly, thoughtfully. The bell was not broken enough to fall silent forever, but it was wounded. Each ring would strain it further. He made the difficult choice not to ring it again until it could be tended properly. That evening, when sunset bled gently into twilight, the bell did not speak. The village noticed then. Candles were lit earlier. Doors were closed more firmly. Still, there was no panic, only a shared awareness, like villagers leaning closer to a fire that had begun to burn lower than usual. As night returned, the fog crept back into the valley, thicker than before, carrying with it the sense that something old had heard the silence and was drawing nearer, not rushing, not hunting, but remembering. Night in Hearthwick had always been a gentle thing, even when storms came, even when winter pressed its weight against the doors. The bell had given the darkness a shape, something measured, something known. Now, without it, the night felt wide and unfinished. Inside their cottages, villagers moved softly, as if loud sounds might travel too far. Hearth fires crackled low. Shadows gathered in corners where light did not quite reach, stretching and thinning with each flicker of flame. The silence between ordinary noises grew longer, deeper, as though the village itself were holding its breath. Mira sat by her window, watching the fog settle like a pale sea across the fields. She wrapped a shawl tighter around her shoulders, not from cold, but from a feeling she could not name. Every so often, she thought she heard something almost sound, like a thought forming just out of reach. When she leaned closer to listen, it vanished. At the tower, old Tomas could not sleep. He sat on the lowest step, lantern unlit beside him, listening to the stones. The bell loomed above, its cracked surface hidden in darkness. He remembered his grandfather's words. The bell doesn't scare what's out there. It reminds it to stay away. Tonight, there was no reminder at all. Near the forest line, the fog shifted in slow, deliberate movements. It gathered around tree trunks, slipped between roots, and thickened in hollows where moonlight could not reach. Something within it moved, not with feet or claws, but with intent, like a thought drifting closer to being spoken. A child whimpered in their sleep. A dog growled once, low and uncertain, then fell silent. The village remained whole, still untouched, yet subtly changed as though an invisible boundary had been nudged, tested, and found softer than before. When midnight passed without a bell, the darkness seemed to settle more firmly, pressing gently but insistently against doors, windows, and minds, not to break in, not yet, only to listen, to learn the shape of a place that had finally gone quiet. And in that deep, careful stillness, Harthwick waited, unaware that waiting too could be an invitation. Morning came again, soft and grey, as though the sun were reluctant to fully arrive. The fog did not lift as it usually did. Instead, it thinned just enough to reveal the village beneath it, clinging low to the ground like a memory that refused to fade. The first sign that something was different appeared near the outer fields. A farmer named Elias noticed the gate to his pasture standing open. He was certain he had closed it the night before. He always did, carefully, with a quiet pat of the wood, as if to seal the day behind him. The latch was not broken. It had simply been lifted, calmly, deliberately. In the damp earth nearby, there were marks, not clear footprints, not claws or hooves, just shallow impressions where the grass had been pressed down, forming a winding path that curved away toward the trees. The fog had already begun to erase them, softening their edges, making them easy to doubt. Elias stared for a long moment, then closed the gate without calling out. He did not feel chased. He did not feel threatened. What he felt instead was a gentle certainty that whatever had passed through did not need to hurry. Word spread quietly through Harthwick. No one raised their voice. No one rang a warning bell. There was no bell to ring. People gathered in small groups, speaking in low tones, choosing words carefully. Someone mentioned the old stories, the ones told only in winter when nights were longest. Someone else shook their head and said this was different. This felt curious. Mira walked to the edge of the fields again, stopping where the village grass met the darker growth beyond. She knelt and touched the ground. It was cool, but not cold, undisturbed, except for that faint sense of having been noticed. From the tower, Tomas watched the valley with tired eyes. He felt the weight of years press against him, not fear, but responsibility. Bell had guarded the village by sound, but sound was only one way of speaking to the dark. He wondered, for the first time, what else might still listen. As the fog slowly retreated, the path of pressed grass vanished entirely, leaving no proof behind. Only the feeling remained soft, patient, and unmistakably present. And Harthwick went on with its day, knowing now that the night had not passed unused. That afternoon, the elders gathered in the long room above the mill, where the air always smelled faintly of grain and sun-warmed wood. The windows were open, letting in light and the distant murmur of the stream, yet the room felt enclosed, wrapped in thought rather than walls. Old stories surfaced gently, like leaves rising in still water. They spoke of a time before the bell, before the tower was stone and steady. Back then, the valley had been quieter, wilder. The dark had not been cruel. The elders said only attentive. It moved when unobserved, paused when noticed. The bell had not been forged as a weapon, but as a voice, a promise that someone would always be awake to say, "We are here." Myra listened from the edge of the room, hands folded, breathing slow. She had grown up hearing fragments of these tales, softened for children, stripped of detail. Now, spoken fully, they felt less like warnings and more like memories. Tomas added what he knew. The bell was never meant to ring forever, he said. Metal tires, stone cracks, even voices must rest. In the past, when the bell weakened, the villagers took turns keeping watch not with weapons, but with light, sound, and presence. Outside, clouds drifted lazily across the sky, unaware of the weight carried by human words below. The elders decided there would be no panic, no shouting into the night. Instead, they would bring back the old ways, slowly and carefully. Lanterns would be kept burning after sunset. Songs would be hummed at doorways. Someone would always be awake, if only to sit and listen. As evening approached, the village felt different, not guarded by a single sound, but held together by many small ones. Laughter drifted softly from one home. A spoon tapped gently against a cup. A low tune wound its way through the air, unhurried and calm. Beyond the fields, the forest listened. Something paused at its edge, sensing the change. The silence it had found the night before was no longer empty. It was filled layered with breath, warmth, and awareness. And for the first time since the bell cracked, the darkness did not move closer. It simply waited, curious once more. When night fell, it did not arrive all at once. It drifted in gently, like a shawl laid across the valley, softening edges and lowering voices. Lanterns glowed in windows, their light warm and steady, casting small golden pools onto the paths between cottages. The first watcher was chosen without ceremony. Mira volunteered, though she did not raise her hand or speak loudly. She simply stepped forward, calm as still water, and said she would stay awake until the moon reached its highest point. No one argued. Some things, it seemed, had already decided themselves. She sat on a stool near the bell tower, lantern at her feet, shawl wrapped close. The tower loomed above her, silent and watchful. Without the bell's voice, the stones felt heavier, more present, as if they too were listening. The village settled into sleep behind her. Doors were closed, but not barred. Curtains shifted slightly with the breeze. Somewhere, a child sighed and turned over in their bed. Life continued, quiet and trusting. Mira listened. She listened to the rustle of leaves, to the faint creak of cooling wood, to the soft chorus of insects beginning their nightly song. Beneath it all, she sensed that same attention she had felt before, focused, gentle, and patient. At the edge of the fog, a shape gathered, not a form with clear lines, but a deepening of shadow, a presence made of pauses rather than motion. It did not cross into the lantern light. It did not advance. It waited, as though uncertain whether it had been invited or merely noticed. Mira did not stand. She did not call out. She simply lifted her lantern a little higher and hummed a slow, wordless tune that rose and fell like breathing. The presence lingered, then softened, thinning into the fog. Not gone, just less. When the moon climbed higher, Myra felt a gentle release, as though something unseen had decided to step back, at least for now. She remained seated until her watch ended, calm and steady, knowing she had not chased anything away, but she had been heard. As Myra's watch ended, another villager took her place, a quiet handoff, marked only by a nod and the soft shift of feet on stone. The night accepted the change without protest. Above, the moon drifted on, unhurried, its pale light laying silver across rooftops and paths. Across Hearthwick, lanterns burned like fallen stars. They were not bright enough to banish the dark, nor meant to. Instead, they stitched the village together with points of warmth and presence. From one window to the next, from doorway to doorway, light passed gently along, as if the village were breathing in a slow, shared rhythm. Thomas sat at his own door, a cup warming his hands. He listened not for danger, but for difference. The night sounded fuller, gnawed with small, human sounds that rose and fell naturally. A chair creaked as someone shifted. A kettle ticked as it cooled. Somewhere, a watcher cleared their throats softly, unafraid to be heard. Beyond the fields, the fog hovered uncertainly. It pressed forward a little, then paused, meeting the lantern light and stopping short. The darkness did not retreat entirely, but it no longer felt bold. It felt thoughtful. In the forest, old paths remembered older rules. When voices were present, when light remained, the unseen learned to wait. It had done so before, long ago, when the bell was young and people stayed awake, not out of fear, but out of care. Near the tower, a faint sound stirred the air, a quiet settling, like metal cooling after heat. The bell did not ring, but it seemed to listen, its cracked surface catching moonlight in a thin, bright line. The night passed without harm, without suddenness. When dawn finally came, it felt gentle and calm, like a promise kept, and Hearthwick woke, knowing that silence, when shared, could still be safe. The morning sun rose a little higher than the day before, as though reassured. Light spilled into the valley, thinning the fog until it lifted in pale ribbons and drifted away toward the hills. Hearthwick stirred with quiet relief, not celebratory, but grateful. Thomas climbed the tower again, slower than he once had, carrying oil and cloth. He did not intend to ring the bell. Instead, he meant to tend to it, to acknowledge its age and its effort. He cleaned its surface carefully, tracing the crack with reverent fingers. When the cloth brushed the fractured metal, a sound emerged. It was not a ring, not even a chime, just a low, brief hum, felt more than heard, like a memory of sound echoing inside the chest. Thomas froze, breath held, listening. Below, Mira paused mid-step, hand resting against a stone wall. Others felt it too, a gentle vibration, subtle and calming, like the final note of a song fading into silence. The bell, it seemed, was still speaking, not loudly, not outward, but inward, to the village itself. Thomas smiled, a small, tired smile. He understood then that the bell had never worked alone. It had always been part of something larger, a shared listening, a collective presence. The crack had not ended its purpose. It had changed it. That evening, when the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft amber and rose, no one waited for the bell to ring. Instead, lanterns were lit, doors were closed gently, songs were hummed, one by one, until they overlapped like threads woven into cloth. At the edge of the fields, the fog returned, but it did not cross the path. It lingered, respectful now, as if remembering an agreement older than fear. The night passed, calm and whole, even without a ringing voice, and Hearthwick rested, learning that protection could be quiet, shared, and warm. Night descended slowly that evening, settling in folds over rooftops and cobblestone paths. The fog crept back from the valley edges, curling through the grass and weaving between the trees like silk threads. Lanterns glimmered through it, soft beacons that reminded the dark the village was awake. Mira walked along the path leading to the forest, lantern in hand, feeling the ground with careful steps. Each blade of grass was coated with dew, sparkling faintly as if tiny stars had fallen to earth. The fog muffled ordinary sounds, the creak of branches. The distant bark of a dog butt carried others more clearly, the hushed whisper of leaves rubbing against one another. The low hum of the stream winding past the village, the faint echo of her own breathing. She paused at the edge of the woods, letting the lantern illuminate the fog around her. Shapes seemed to form there, shifting in the periphery of vision, never clear, never threatening. She hummed a slow tune, feeling the sound drift into the night, small but deliberate. In response, the fog seemed to hesitate, as though listening. A whisper followed her steps, soft, intangible, like a breeze brushing past the back of her neck. It was not a voice, yet it felt intentional, aware. Mira did not startle. She did not run. Instead, she stopped, taking a long, steady breath, letting the calm she carried fill the space between her and the darkness. From the village, lanterns flickered gently, and distant laughter, soft and low-threaded through the night. The watchers, taking turns, hummed songs, whispered prayers, or simply exhaled, breathing life into the quiet. Together, they created a web of attention, a gentle presence woven into the fog itself. Slowly, the whispering faded, and the fog thinned at the edges near the lantern light. Whatever it had been, watchful, patient, curious, retreated, just enough to leave space for peace. Mira turned back toward the village, lantern swinging slightly, steps slow and rhythmic. The night felt wider, deeper, and somehow softer. It had tested them, nudged them, and found their calm stronger than fear. Harthwick rested beneath the stars, and the fog, too, seemed content to pause rather than advance. That night, the village seemed to breathe as one. Lanterns burned in steady pools of gold, casting soft, warm light against walls and paths. Doors were closed, but not with urgencies, simply as a quiet, protective gesture. Harthwick had learned a new rhythm. The night could be kept at bay, not by a single bell, but by many small, attentive actions. Mira took her place near the tower again, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle into her shoulders. She was not alone. Others joined quietly, each bringing their own lantern, their own presence. They did not speak, only acknowledged each other with nods, sharing in the simple act of being awake together. The fog crept toward the village, gentle and deliberate, curling between cottages, brushing against fence posts. It smelled faintly of damp earth and pine, carrying the soft, subtle notes of the forest beyond. Mira hummed a slow, soothing tune, letting it rise and fall with her breath. Others did the same, their voices blending with the quiet, their songs forming a gentle chorus. Somewhere in the edge of the mist, movement flickered soft, unhurried, curious. The darkness did not rush forward. It waited, aware of the lights, aware of the human presence. It observed, patient, like a visitor, unsure whether to approach. The bell tower loomed above, silent, yet somehow alive. Its cracked metal seemed to hum faintly in response to the human chorus below. A low vibration felt more than heard. It was not a warning, not a command, simply a gentle acknowledgement of presence. Time passed slowly. Each breath, each whispered hum, each steady step along the paths reinforced the quiet boundary between village and forest. The night tested them, nudged them, and found them steady, calm, attentive. As the first pale light of dawn touched the rooftops, the fog began to retreat. It lingered only in hollow spaces, bowing to the collective vigilance of Harthwick's people. The village exhaled softly, not in relief, but in recognition of what they had accomplished together. A night held without fear, a darkness met with patience and care. Morning arrived in a quiet wash of pale gold and silver, spilling across rooftops and fields like soft liquid. The fog lingered stubbornly in the hollows and low-lying paths, drifting lazily as though reluctant to leave the valley entirely. Yet there was a difference. The mist seemed less curious now, less daring. It curled gently along the edges of stone walls and wooden fences, never daring to press too far into the reach of light. Villagers stirred with slow, deliberate movements. Pots were set on hearths, doors were opened to the cool morning air, then carefully closed again, leaving only faint cracks for the wind to pass through. There was no rush, no sense of panic, just the steady, quiet rhythm of lives unfolding in a space that had been tested but not broken. Thomas stood at the tower's base, leaning on his walking stick, eyes tracing the lines of the bell above. Its crack caught the early light, a thin silver line on the dark metal. He knew it would take careful attention to preserve the bell, yet he also knew that its purpose had shifted. No longer just a guard against the dark, it had become a witness, a participant in a shared understanding with the villagers. Mira walked through the dew-slick grass, toward the edge of the fields. The mist brushed her feet, cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of moss and earth. She knelt and touched the ground, noticing the subtle impressions where creatures had passed not in haste, but in thoughtfulness. They had been here, yes, but observed, tested, and ultimately respected the calm strength that held the village together. From the tower, the valley appeared still, serene, almost sacred. Birds began their morning chorus, tentative at first, then growing more confident, weaving a gentle melody across the fields and into the village. It was a song of reassurance, of continuation. The bell may have cracked, but life persisted. Attention, presence, and care had taken its place, and in the soft light of dawn, Hearthwick awoke not to fear, but to a slow, deep understanding that safety did not reside in a single sound, but in the many gentle acts of being awake, of noticing, of being present with one another. The fog, now dispersed but lingering at the edges, seemed to acknowledge this truth, curling once more around the distant trees before fading toward the hills. Days passed slowly after that first night without the bell. The villagers moved with a measured calm, aware that the world had not ended, yet sensing that care now required attention, not assumption. The tower's bell hung silent, its fracture visible in the pale sunlight, but its presence remained a quiet companion. Myra often lingered nearby, tracing the lines of the crack with her eyes. She could feel the bells hum beneath her fingertips, a faint vibration that pulsed with the rhythm of the village itself. It was no longer a commanding voice. It no longer warned or ordered. Instead, it resonated gently, speaking in a quiet language only understood by those willing to listen. Lanterns became more than tools. They were now signals of presence, tiny beacons that reminded the dark that humans were still awake, still mindful. Children learned to hum soft tunes before bed, joining in the chorus that rose from cottage to cottage. Even the elderly, who preferred silence, added their gentle voices, creating a tapestry of sound and presence that filled the village and reached outward into the fields. At the forest's edge, shadows shifted with deliberation. The creatures that had once been held at bay by the bell now observed with measured patience, curious about the humans' new rhythm. They did not approach in malice, nor did they retreat completely. They lingered in the spaces between fog and light, listening, learning, adjusting to the new cadence of vigilance. Thomas climbed the tower carefully each day, inspecting the bell, maintaining it, yet resisting the urge to ring it fully. Instead, He allowed it to resonate softly, a hum rather than a chime, and the village responded. Doors closed with care, songs were sung, and lanterns glimmered like stars in a field of mist. The night arrived again, calm and steady. The fog rolled in, curling along paths and fences, brushing gently against cottages, but it did not press forward. The bell, though cracked, vibrated faintly, as if acknowledging the new harmony. The darkness had tested them, nudged them, and found their presence strong, patient, and kind. Hearthwick rested beneath the watchful night, discovering that safety could be subtle, quiet, and shared, born not by a single sound, but by countless acts of awareness and care. The evening settled with a softness that felt almost tangible. The sun's last rays touched the village with a muted gold, and the air was scented faintly of wood smoke, damp earth, and the lingering sweetness of late-blooming flowers. Shadows stretched long across the cobblestones, blending with the fog that was beginning its nightly drift from the valleys toward the forest. Mira walked slowly along one of the quieter paths, her lantern swinging lightly at her side. Each step pressed dew into the grass, leaving tiny, fleeting impressions that vanished almost immediately. She breathed deeply, feeling the cool night settle over her chest and shoulders. The village seemed to exhale with her, a collective slowing, a mindful pause before darkness fully arrived. At the tower, the cracked bell hung silently, catching what little light remained. Tomas, lantern in hand, traced the thin silver line along its surface, feeling the gentle pulse beneath his fingers. The bell no longer commanded the night, but it remained a subtle presence, a reminder that attentiveness alone could carry weight. Across Hearthwick, doors closed gently, not in fear but in care. A mother hummed a lullaby that was more suggestion than melody, letting her voice mingle with the rustle of the wind through the trees. Somewhere else, a child whispered to a pet, their small words joining the quiet chorus that held the night at bay. Even the animals seemed to recognize this rhythm, moving softly, listening, waiting. The fog approached, curling along the edges of cottages, brushing against fence posts, and drifting across the fields. It carried the scent of damp moss and leaves, but it no longer felt intrusive. Myra paused, lifting her lantern higher, letting its light spread across the swirling mist. The shadows wavered, hesitant, sensing the calm presence that awaited them. For the first time in nights, the village felt as if it were breathing with the fog, not in conflict, not in fear, but in an understanding that was slow, deliberate, and peaceful. The darkness, curious and patient, lingered at the edges, neither rushing nor retreating, learning the shape of the night that now belonged to those who watched with quiet care. Night deepened slowly over Hearthwick, stretching long shadows across cobblestone streets and moss-covered roofs. The fog curled low through the fields, gliding like water around fence posts and into the hollows where the land dipped. Lanterns glimmered in cottages, their warm light spilling across windowsills and doorways, creating pools of calm in the expanding darkness. Myra settled near the edge of the forest, her lantern casting a circle of golden light over the grass. She inhaled the cool night air, smelling earth, damp leaves, and the faint smoke of distant hearths. Her eyes traced the mist, noting its gentle, purposeful drift. She hummed a soft, unhurried tune that seemed to ripple through the fog, a tiny heartbeat echoing through the valley. Other villagers had joined in their own ways. Some hummed, others tapped gently on their doors or windows, a rhythm shared across the village. Children, quietly tucked in at the edges of rooms, whispered little verses that echoed softly. Even the animals moved carefully, aware of the gentle vigilance surrounding them. The village had become a living, breathing net of presence, each act adding to the whole. The cracked bell hung silently above them, its surface catching the faint moonlight. Though it could no longer ring fully, it vibrated faintly, a subtle hum that joined the chorus of attentiveness below. Its sound, quiet as it was, reinforced the rhythm, the steady, patient heartbeat of Hearthwick against the night. Beyond the lantern light, the fog paused. Shapes shifted just out of sight, curious, tentative. There was no hurry, no threat, only observation. The darkness had learned to move carefully, as the village had learned to watch and listen. Time slowed. Each breath, each hum, each lantern flicker wove together into a pattern of presence. The night unfolded gently, without rush or interruption, teaching that vigilance was not a demand, but a calm, shared understanding. As the first hints of dawn softened the sky, the fog began to recede, leaving the village intact, peaceful and attentive. Hearthwick had survived another night, not by the force of sound, but by the quiet power of care and presence, learning that protection could be woven through the simplest acts of mindfulness. The first light of morning seeped over Hearthwick like gentle water, sliding over rooftops, warming the edges of windows, and illuminating the mist that still lingered in low hollows. The fog, though thinning, carried with it a lingering coolness that pressed lightly against the skin and made the village feel dreamlike, suspended between night and day. Tomas stood at the base of the bell tower, lantern in hand. The cracked bell above him caught the morning light, the thin fracture glinting faintly. He ran his hand along its smooth metal, feeling the subtle vibrations that pulsed beneath the surface. The bell no longer rang with authority, but its quiet hum had become part of the village's rhythm, a presence rather than a command. From their homes, villagers emerged slowly, moving deliberately, carrying with them warmth and soft words. A mother lifted her child from sleep, brushing a strand of hair from their face. A baker set out fresh bread, the scent of yeast mingling with the damp morning air. Every small sound, the creak of a door, the soft footsteps on stone, the low murmur of conversation became a note in the village's gentle morning song. Mira walked through the Douladon grass, her lantern swinging lightly, illuminating glistening blades and the faint prints left by small animals. She paused at the edge of the fields, breathing deeply, feeling the slow heartbeat of the village beneath her. The fog retreated slightly at her presence, curling back toward the distant trees as if respecting her calm. Across the valley, birds began their morning chorus, tentative at first, then swelling into a melody that stretched across fields and rooftops. Their song blended seamlessly with the village's quiet life, a layered harmony that spoke of safety, awareness, and shared presence. Hearthwick woke gently, not with alarm, but with the soft reassurance that came from knowing the village and its people were attentive, that night and day were held with care, and that even a cracked bell could still nurture the rhythm of life when met with patience and presence. By mid-morning, the fog had mostly lifted from the village streets, curling instead along the distant fields and the edges of the forest like a silver ribbon. Its movement was slow, deliberate, almost thoughtful, as if it had learned to respect the patterns of Hearthwick's daily life. The village, in turn, moved quietly, aware of the delicate balance between light and shadow, between presence and absence. Mira walked along the main path, lantern now unlit, letting the soft sun guide her steps. She listened to the subtle sounds of life, the drip of dew from roof eaves, the low murmur of the stream threading through the valley, the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by a playful breeze. Even the birds seemed cautious, trilling in measured bursts, as though aware of the fragile order the village had cultivated. At the tower, Tomas polished the bell with slow, careful strokes. The crack gleamed faintly under the sunlight, a reminder of imperfection and endurance. The bell no longer needed to ring to assert its presence. Its quiet hum, barely perceptible, seemed to ripple through the village in waves, felt more than heard. Across the fields, the fog hovered, patient and distant. Shadows shifted beneath its folds, neither menacing nor bold, but the soft sense of awareness persisted. Myra paused at the edge of the pasture, sensing the attention even without seeing its source. She understood then that vigilance did not need confrontation. It could exist quietly, in balance with life, in harmony with the everyday hum of human activity. The village itself seemed to breathe in rhythm with the day, every step, every movement a note in a gentle melody. Even the air felt attentive, carrying warmth and moisture in measured waves. And as the sun climbed higher, the fog began to retreat, respecting the pattern of life below, leaving behind the sense that Hearthwick had grown stronger not through force, but through quiet presence and shared awareness. Evening returned to Hearthwick with the softness of a sigh. The sun dipped low, brushing rooftops with muted gold and casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The air carried a cool sweetness, mingled with the faint smoke of hearths and the earthy scent of damp grass from the fields. Lanterns were lit one by one, their light spilling softly against doorways and windows, creating pools of warmth that drew the night back gently rather than forcing it away. The village, now accustomed to its new rhythm, moved deliberately. Doors were closed, not with fear, but with care. Steps were soft on stone, and voices, when they arose, were low and steady. Myra positioned herself near the bell tower once more, her lantern illuminating the base while shadows pooled above. The bell hung silently, its crack catching the last rays of sun like a pale scar of silver. She ran her fingers lightly along its cool metal, feeling the faint hum that vibrated through the stone, a pulse more felt than heard. It seemed to respond to the village itself, echoing their vigilance back into the night. The fog began to drift inward, curling along paths and around fence posts, but it moved more cautiously than before. It lingered in the spaces between houses, brushing lightly against walls and windows, as though testing the rhythm of life within. Myra hummed softly, letting the tune rise and fall, weaving her presence into the evening air. Somewhere farther in the village, another hum joined hers, a child's quiet song, then another from a nearby cottage. The night stretched out slowly, deliberate and patient. The village's collective attention formed a subtle barrier, gentle but insistent, a shared rhythm that the fog and whatever lurked within it could not ignore. Hearthwick rested into the night, its calm, deliberate, a measured harmony between presence, awareness, and care. Night settled softly over Hearthwick, its presence unhurried and gentle. Lanterns glimmered along winding streets, flickering lightly against walls and windows, casting a warm, steady glow that kept the darkness at bay without challenging it. Shadows stretched long and soft, curling around the edges of cottages and fences like slow dancers, following the rhythm of the village's careful pace. Myra walked along the edge of the village, lantern held low, letting the light touch the dispecked grass and illuminate the soft mist curling round her feet. Each step pressed gently into the damp earth, leaving impressions that vanished almost as soon as they were made. The fog twisted and shifted at the edges of her vision, moving deliberately, as if aware that she watched it without alarm. From nearby windows, the villagers hummed softly or whispered songs into the night. Even the youngest children participated, their voices merging with the sounds of the wind through leaves, the faint bubbling of the stream, and the soft call of night birds. Each sound, however quiet, was a thread woven into the village's invisible tapestry, a measure of calm vigilance that stretched across the streets and fields. The bell, cracked but not silent, hung above the village. Its metal shimmered faintly under the moonlight, and though it did not ring fully, it vibrated softly, responding to the collective awareness below. Its hum blended with the other gentle sounds, a subtle heartbeat beneath the rhythm of human care. Beyond the lantern light, the fog lingered, curling among the trees and rolling over the hills. Shapes moved quietly within it, watchful, patient, cautious. There was no malice in their attention, only curiosity. And as Myra hummed again, the fog seemed to soften at the edges. Hesitant to cross the threshold of warmth and light that the village maintained with such quiet determination, Hearthwick rested beneath the night, its presence steady, patient, and aware, a calm strength that needed no ringing bell to assert itself. The night deepened, folding over Hearthwick in soft layers of darkness. Lanterns glimmered like small, patient stars scattered through the village, their light tracing familiar paths across rooftops, streets, and the edges of the fields. Every cottage, every doorway, every quiet street was touched by the gentle glow of watchful attention. Myra stood at the tower's base, lantern swaying lightly in her hand. She listened not for sound, not for danger, but for the subtle rhythm of life itself. The cracked bell above her vibrated faintly, a hum beneath the hum of the village, like the heartbeat of something older and quieter than any spoken word. She closed her eyes, letting the pulse fill her chest, synchronizing her breath with its gentle rise and fall. Across Hearthwick, other villagers maintained their quiet vigil. A baker hummed as he kneaded dough for the next morning. A mother sang a soft song to her child, words older than memory, measured and calm. Even the animals, aware of the rhythm around them, moved carefully, paws and hooves pressing softly against the ground. The fog drifted slowly along the outer fields, curling around fence posts and weaving through trees with deliberate slowness. It carried the scent of damp earth and moss, and occasionally a faint trace of the village fires. Shapes moved within it, indistinct and patient, curious about the human presence but careful not to intrude. Mira lifted her lantern slightly, casting a warm circle of light that seemed to push the fog back just enough to make room for the village's calm. Time itself slowed. Each breath, each hum, each gentle movement of lantern or step became part of a larger cadency rhythm of awareness, care, and presence that stretched through the night. Hearthwick rested not in fear, but in shared vigilance, discovering that the quiet acts of attention were stronger than any bell, more enduring than any sound. And as the moon traced its arc across the sky, the village held its night in patience and serenity, the hum of presence threading every street, every doorway, and every heart. The fog returned slowly that evening, moving across the valley like a pale tide, curling around the edges of fields and cottages. Its motion was soft and deliberate, brushing lightly against fences, trees, and the corners of the village paths. Lanterns glimmered steadily in response, their gentle light forming warm circles that held the fog at bay without driving it away. Mira walked carefully along one of the quieter lanes, her lantern held low. The faint moisture in the air kissed her cheeks, carrying with it the scent of wet grass, pine, and the distant smoke of evening fires. Every footstep pressed into the dew, leaving a subtle impression that vanished almost immediately. She breathed slowly, deeply, letting the calm of the village settle into her chest. From the cottages, soft sounds rose, low hums, whispered words, and the gentle shuffle of inhabitants moving through their evening routines. Children's voices were hushed but steady, blending into the rhythm of attentive adults. Even the animals seemed to sense the village's collective focus, padding softly, careful not to disturb the fragile harmony of presence. The cracked bell hung above, catching faint moonlight, its surface reflecting the lantern glow like muted silver. Though it no longer rang, it vibrated gently, a subtle resonance felt in the stone tower and in the earth below. It was a quiet hum that harmonized with the village, a thread of continuity and reassurance woven into the night. Beyond the lantern light, the fog lingered, curious and patient. Shapes drifted just at the edge of vision, observing but not approaching. The village's vigilance, quiet and steady, created an invisible boundary that the night itself seemed to respect. Hearthwick had learned to coexist with the darkness, to share the night rather than fear it, and in that shared understanding, the village slept calmly beneath the watchful stars. Night fell gently over Hearthwick, deepening the shadows that pooled between cottages and along winding streets. Lanterns glimmered steadily, their soft light spilling across the cobblestones and casting gentle reflections on dew-kissed grass. The village moved in unison with the night, not in fear, but in measured, deliberate care. Mira walked along the edge of the fields, lantern swaying lightly, illuminating the soft mist curling around her feet. Each step pressed the damp earth, leaving fleeting impressions that vanished almost immediately. She inhaled the cool night air, carrying the scent of moss, wet earth, and distant hearth fires. The fog moved slowly, curling like smoke, hesitant at the borders of the light. From within the village, small sounds rose into the quiet, the hum of a mother's lullaby, the whispered song of a child, the gentle creak of a door, the soft shift of furniture. Even the animals moved with careful attention, paws and hooves pressing lightly into the softened earth. Every sound, however small, became part of a collective rhythm, a slow, steady heartbeat of presence that stretched across the village. Above them, the cracked bell hung silently, catching the faint silver of moonlight. Its surface vibrated subtly, a hum that resonated through the stone tower and into the ground below. Though it no longer rang with authority, it spoke in a quieter, more enduring way. Its presence felt in the shared vigilance of the villagers. Beyond the reach of lantern light, the fog lingered, observing patiently. Shadows shifted within it, indistinct and careful, neither threatening nor bold. The village held the night gently, its quiet acts of attention forming a barrier stronger than any single bell. Hearthwick breathed with the night, and the night, in turn, seemed to breathe with it, a slow, mutual understanding unfolding beneath the watchful stars. The night in Hearthwick had settled into a steady rhythm, each breath of wind, each rustle of leaves, and each soft step along the streets joining a subtle symphony of presence. Lanterns glimmered gently from windows and doorways, casting small, warm circles of light that softened the shadows without banishing them entirely. The fog drifted slowly through the fields, curling around trees and fences with patient deliberation. Mira walked near the tower once more, lantern swinging lightly. She felt the cool dew on her hands and the faint vibration of the cracked bell above her, humming quietly in a way that resonated with the village itself. She paused, letting her senses extend beyond sight and sound, feeling the delicate balance between presence and observation. The village had become a living, breathing web of attentiveness. In cottages along the street, soft hums rose, a song from a mother to a child, a low melody from a baker finishing his evening work, whispers from an elder at a window. Even the smallest sounds contributed to the whole, a steady, calming pulse that stretched across Hearthwick. The people had learned that safety was not merely absence of threat, but a shared attentiveness that could extend beyond themselves. The fog shifted near the forest, curling closer to the edge, but stopping short where the lanterns and human presence met it. Shapes moved within its folds, curious yet careful, neither pressing forward nor retreating. The darkness had learned patience, its watchfulness mirrored by the village's calm. Time seemed to slow, each breath, each hum, each lantern glow, marking the passage of night. Harthwick rested in quiet awareness, the cracked bell above providing a subtle hum of connection rather than warning. In this mutual attentiveness, the village and the night found a gentle understanding, a harmony born of care, patience, and shared presence. Night deepened gradually, folding over Harthwick like a soft, heavy cloak. Lanterns glimmered in windows and along streets, their golden light steady and warm, illuminating the familiar paths with quiet assurance. Shadows pooled gently in corners and between cottages, stretched and softened by the presence of light, and the fog rolled in from the fields with patient, unhurried movement. Mira walked slowly along the village path near the tower, lantern held low, casting a circle of warmth through the mist. The ground was cool and damp beneath her feet, each step pressing into the dew-soaked grass and leaving an imprint that disappeared almost immediately. She inhaled deeply, feeling the subtle pulse of the village around her, the collective rhythm of lanterns, hums, and whispered movements blending into a gentle, steady heartbeat. The cracked bell above hung silently, its surface catching faint moonlight, though it no longer rang. A subtle vibration traveled through the tower's stone, a hum almost imperceptible yet resonant with the presence of the village. It was a quiet acknowledgement, a connection, a reminder that vigilance need not shout to exist. From the cottages came soft, measured sounds, a low lullaby, the gentle clink of a teacup, the quiet movement of someone settling into a chair. Each sound added a layer to the village's collective presence, weaving a network of calm that stretched across streets, fields, and hearts alike. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted with careful attention. They lingered, patient and deliberate, observing the balance the village had created. There was curiosity in the darkness, a silent recognition of care, of attention, of life sustained through calm awareness rather than force. Harthwick held the night with quiet strength, each breath, each hum, each gentle lantern glow a testament to the subtle power of shared presence. And in that calm, the village discovered a new kind of safety, one that rested not on a single sound, but on the slow, deliberate rhythm of attentiveness, patience, and care. The valley around Harthwick lay still under the night sky, shadows stretching along the contours of hills and trees. The fog drifted slowly across the fields, curling between fence posts and around the bases of cottages, moving as if it were breathing, alive in its patient observation. Lanterns flickered softly in the village, their warm light forming gentle pools that marked the presence of life and care. Mira walked along the edge of the fields, her lantern held carefully, casting a glow that traced the curve of the mist around her feet. She listened, not for danger, but for the subtle shifts in sound, the faint brush of leaves in the wind, the slow trickle of the stream, the occasional soft creak of a door settling in its frame. Every sound became part of the village's rhythm, an unseen thread linking watcher to watched, human to night. The cracked bell, suspended above the village in the tower, caught the moonlight in thin glints along its fracture. It did not ring, yet a faint vibration hummed through the stone, subtle and steady, felt rather than heard. It echoed the rhythm of the village, a quiet heartbeat acknowledging the vigilance and care below. In cottages, soft hums and whispers rose, joining the natural sounds of the night. Children hummed their lullabies, mothers sang low songs, and elders whispered gentle words of comfort. Even the animals moved cautiously, their steps mindful in the shared attention that filled the air. At the edges of the fog, shadows lingered, watching patiently, neither threatening nor retreating. The village's presence, the quiet lanterns, the soft songs, The hum of care formed a barrier not of force, but of awareness. Hearthwick breathed in rhythm with the night, teaching the darkness that safety could exist without alarms, and that vigilance could be gentle, deliberate, and shared. Moonlight filtered softly through drifting clouds, spilling silver across rooftops and cobblestone streets. The village of Hearthwick was wrapped in quiet warmth, lanterns glimmering from windows and doorways like attentive stars. Shadows pooled gently around corners, softened by the glow, and the fog curled along the edges of fields and pathways, moving with the patient rhythm of the night itself. Mira walked slowly toward the tower, her lantern swinging lightly. Each blade of Dulladan grass caught the light, sparkling faintly as though tiny stars had fallen to the earth. The cracked bell above shimmered faintly in the moonlight, its subtle hum vibrating through the stone tower, felt rather than heard. It was a quiet pulse that echoed the collective presence of the village, a reminder that vigilance need not be loud to exist. From the cottages came soft, deliberate sounds, a mother's lullaby, a whispered conversation, the careful shift of furniture. Each note, however small, blended with the natural rhythm of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant trickle of the stream, the soft hum of attentive villagers, forming a network of awareness that spread through the valley. The fog, curious yet cautious, lingered at the edges of the lantern light. Shapes moved within its folds, tentative and patient, observing the balance the village had cultivated. They tested the quiet barrier of attention, but each movement was met with calm presence, a harmony of human awareness that the darkness could not breach. Hearthwick rested beneath the moonlight, its streets, cottages, and fields held in gentle vigilance. Every breath, every hum, every soft glow of lantern light threaded together into a tapestry of care, teaching the night that protection could be quiet, patient, and shared, and that the cracked bell's song still lived in the rhythm of those who watched with gentle hearts. The fog drifted in slowly that night, curling around the edges of the village like a pale ribbon, moving deliberately, without hurry. Lanterns glimmered warmly from windows and doorways, casting gentle light over the streets and paths, marking the presence of life and care. Shadows pooled softly beneath the trees and along fence lines, stretching into the night but tempered by the glow of watchful lanterns. Mira walked near the edge of the fields, lantern held low, each step pressed lightly into the dew-soaked grass, leaving brief impressions that the fog would almost immediately obscure. She inhaled the cool, damp air, smelling moss, wet earth, and the faint smoke of distant fires. The night felt alive in a quiet, attentive way as though it listened to every small sound, every careful step, every hum that drifted from cottage to cottage. Above the village, the cracked bell hung silently. Its surface caught the silver light of the moon, and though it could no longer ring, it vibrated faintly, sending a subtle hum through the stone of the tower and into the earth below. Its voice was quiet but persistent, echoing the collective rhythm of the village and joining the soft murmur of attentive life below. From the cottages, soft sounds arose, whispers, low hums, the gentle shuffle of feet. Even the children, tucked into beds, hummed under their breath, unknowingly reinforcing the village's calm vigilance. The animals moved quietly, paw and hoofalls, absorbed by the soft earth, becoming part of the web of presence. At the fog's edge, shapes shifted with careful observation, neither pressing forward nor retreating. They lingered, patient and deliberate, sensing the rhythm of attentiveness that held the village together. Hearthwick had learned a slow, quiet strength, that the night could be met not with force or alarm, but with patience, care, and shared awareness. Night deepened, settling over Hearthwick with a calm weight that felt alive, yet gentle. Lanterns glimmered softly along streets and doorways, their warm light pooling on stone and grass, creating a sense of careful attention that stretched across the village. Shadows softened at the edges, curling lazily in the warm glow, and the fog drifted in from the fields, slow and deliberate, like water moving through hollowed paths. Myra stood near the bell tower, lantern in hand, watching the mist curl around the base of the tower and the edges of the nearby trees. The cracked bell hung above, silent but present, its surface catching faint moonlight. Though it no longer rang, a soft vibration hummed through the tower stone, a pulse that resonated with the presence of the villagers below. She inhaled deeply, letting the subtle rhythm of life around her fill her chest. From the cottages rose the quiet chorus of human presence. Mothers hummed softly as they settled children. Whispered conversations floated through open windows, and the gentle shuffle of movement in the homes became part of the village's rhythm. Even the animals moved softly, mindful of the calm energy that stretched through the night. The fog lingered at the edges of the lantern light, drifting slowly, shifting cautiously as if sensing the pattern of care below. Shapes formed briefly in the mist, tentative and observing, but never approaching too closely. The village's shared presence created a boundary, not of force, but of awareness, a delicate harmony that the darkness respected. Time seemed to slow, measured by breaths, hums, and gentle lantern glows. Hearthwick rested within its own quiet vigilance, learning that protection could be woven through patience, attention, and collective care. In the calm of the night, beneath the watchful stars, the cracked bell's song lived on not in sound, but in the rhythm of presence, steady and enduring. The night stretched long and slow over Hearthwick, folding the valley into a gentle hush. Lanterns glimmered along streets, doorways, and the edges of cottages, casting warm, steady light over dew-slick stones and grass. Each pool of glow was a quiet presence, a soft signal that life persisted, attentive and calm. Shadows lingered between lanterns, softened by the warmth, while the fog curled in from the fields with patient, deliberate motion. Mira walked along the path that led toward the forest's edge, her lantern swaying lightly. Each step pressed into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions that the fog would smooth away. She inhaled slowly, tasting the coolness of the night, the faint scent of moss, and the delicate smoke from distant hearths. Her heartbeat synchronized with the subtle pulse of the village lanterns, hums, whispers, and the soft shuffle of careful steps, forming a gentle rhythm that filled the valley. The cracked bell hung silently above the village in its tower, catching pale moonlight along the fracture. Though it could no longer ring, a faint hum vibrated through the stone and into the ground below, blending seamlessly with the quiet chorus of human presence. It was a reminder that vigilance need not shout. It could live in the steady, shared rhythm of care. From cottages, soft sounds drifted into the night, a mother humming a lullaby, children whispering their little songs, elders speaking low words to one another. Even the animals moved with awareness, careful not to disturb the harmony of the village. Every sound, no matter how faint, contributed to the subtle, pervasive network of attention that held Hearthwick safe. The fog shifted at the edges of the lantern light, curious yet cautious, lingering as if observing the village's careful rhythm. Shapes moved slowly within it, patient and deliberate, watching without intent to harm. Hearthwick rested in this shared vigilance, learning that protection could flow quietly through presence, attention, and care, stronger than any sound or alarm. Night deepened further, drawing a quiet curtain of darkness over Hearthwick. Lanterns glimmered like gentle stars, their warm light stretching across streets, doorways, and rooftops, illuminating familiar paths while softening shadows. The fog crept in slowly from the valley edges, curling around fences and trees with deliberate patience, careful not to disturb the quiet order the villagers maintained. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern swaying lightly, casting a circle of warmth around her feet. The dew on the grass glimmered faintly, reflecting the glow of lanterns like tiny, scattered lights. Above her, the cracked bell hung silently, its surface catching moonlight in a thin silver line. Though it could no longer ring, a faint hum vibrated through the tower, felt in the bones of the stone, and beneath her feet a subtle echo of the villagers' collective presence. Soft sounds drifted through the streets, a mother's lullaby, whispers exchanged through open windows, the careful shuffle of someone moving about their home. Children hummed quietly, adding their voices to the chorus, while animals moved with attentive caution, respecting the rhythm of life around them. Every noise, every gesture, became part of the network of presence that stretched across the village, gentle and persistent. The fog lingered at the edges of the lantern light, curious yet hesitant, shifting as though listening. Shadows moved within it slowly, deliberately, neither bold nor threatening. The village's careful vigilance created a subtle boundary, one that did not repel with force, but held through calm awareness and shared presence. Time stretched and slowed, measured by breath, hum, and lantern glow. Hearthwick rested in the quiet strength of its watch, learning that protection could exist not in a single ringing bell, but in patience, attention, and the soft, persistent rhythm of life, held together by care. The night deepened quietly over Hearthwick, the valley wrapped in a soft blanket of stillness. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their gentle light forming small, warm pools that reached into the streets and paths. Shadows stretched long, softened by the glow, and the fog curled slowly through the fields, moving with a careful deliberation that seemed almost aware of the village below. Mira walked along the main path, her lantern held just high enough to illuminate the dew-laden grass. Each step left a fleeting impression, pressed into the damp earth and vanishing almost immediately. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet moss, faint smoke from distant fires, and the subtle sweetness of late-blooming flowers. She inhaled deeply, feeling the slow heartbeat of the village in every sound, every movement, every soft hum rising from the cottages. Above, the cracked bell hung silently in its tower, the fracture catching the moonlight like a thin silver scar. Though it could no longer ring, it vibrated faintly, its soft hum blending with the quiet chorus of human presence below. It was a pulse that could be felt rather than heard, a subtle reassurance threaded through the village's rhythm. From the cottages drifted low hums, whispers, and gentle sounds of evening routines, children murmuring songs, mothers settling blankets, the shuffle of furniture, and the quiet steps of careful footsteps. Even the animals moved attentively, aware of the shared calm that spread through the streets. Every soft noise became part of the village's web of presence, a network that held the night gently at bay. At the edges of the fog, shapes shifted, patient and deliberate, watching the rhythm without pressing forward. Hearthwick rested in the quiet of shared vigilance, learning that protection could exist not in loud alarms or commands, but in attentiveness, care, and the slow, steady hum of life, sustained through presence. The night hung softly over Hearthwick, each corner and street wrapped in calm, steady quiet. Lanterns glimmered in windows and along doorways, painting warm circles of light that met the darkness without conflict. Shadows pooled beneath trees and along stone walls, softened by the glow, while the fog curled slowly from the distant fields, moving with patient deliberation, as if feeling its way through the valley. Mira walked near the tower, lantern swinging lightly, Dew clung to the grass at her feet, sparkling faintly under the lantern's glow, while the faint scent of moss, damp earth, and hearth fires drifted on the air. She inhaled slowly, letting the calm of the village seep into her chest. Every movement, every quiet hum, every whispered sound from the cottages around her added to the subtle rhythm that held the night gently in place. The cracked bell above caught the moonlight in thin lines along its fracture. Though it could no longer ring fully, a soft vibration hummed through the stone of the tower, felt more than heard, a delicate resonance that echoed the steady attentiveness of the village. It was a pulse that reminded Myra and everyone awake that vigilance could be quiet, enduring, and shared. From the cottages came low hums and soft whispers, mothers singing lullabies, children murmuring songs, elders speaking in gentle tones. Even animals moved with care, their steps blending with the subtle music of presence that filled the streets and fields. The fog at the edges observed, shifting gently but never pressing forward, its curiosity tempered by the steady, quiet, human watch. Time seemed to stretch in the night, measured by breath, hum, and lantern glow. Hearthwick rested in its own calm strength, learning that safety could exist in patience, attention, and care woven through the village like a soft, enduring thread that even the darkest shadows could not undo. The night continued to settle over Hearthwick, soft and patient. Lanterns glimmered along streets and doorways, their warm light forming steady pools that met the darkness without struggle. Shadows softened at the edges, stretching lazily across walls and paths, while the fog drifted in from the fields, curling like smoke with deliberate, careful motion. Myra moved slowly along the path near the bell tower, lantern swinging gently. The dew-damp grass beneath her feet sparkled faintly in the glow, each step pressing softly into the earth and leaving only fleeting marks. She inhaled the cool, humid air, tasting the moss, wet soil, and the faint smoke of distant hearth fires. Every sense seemed attuned to the village's rhythm, the hums from cottages, the gentle whispers, and the soft shuffle of careful steps. The cracked bell above her hung silently, catching the pale light of the moon along its fracture. Though it could no longer ring, a faint vibration pulsed through the stone tower, felt more than heard. It harmonized with the presence below, a subtle heartbeat of vigilance woven through the village. From nearby homes came soft sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly to each other. Animals moved with care, their steps deliberate, blending into the quiet rhythm. Every small noise, every careful movement contributed to the web of attention that stretched across Hearthwick, creating a calm, protective presence that the night could neither ignore nor invade. At the fog's edges, shadows shifted slowly, observing the village's steady rhythm without intrusion. Shapes lingered with patience, curious yet respectful, and the night responded in kind. Hearthwick rested beneath the stars, held in a gentle harmony where vigilance was quiet, care was deliberate, and the cracked bell's song lived on not in sound, but in the rhythm of presence. The night stretched across Hearthwick with a softness that seemed almost tangible. Lanterns glimmered steadily from windows and doorways, their warm glow spilling gently over cobblestones and dew-kissed grass. Shadows curled slowly, softened by the light, while the fog drifted through the fields and along the forest edges, moving with a deliberate patience, like a silent observer of the village below. Myra walked along a narrow path near the tower, her lantern casting a soft, circular glow on the damp grass. The air was cool, carrying faint hints of moss, earth, and the distant smoke of fires. She inhaled slowly, letting the calm rhythm of the village seep into her chest, feeling the heartbeat of Hearthwick in every step, every hum, every whisper that drifted from the cottages. Above, the cracked bell hung in quiet repose. Moonlight glinted along its fracture, revealing its delicate imperfection. Though it no longer rang with authority, a subtle vibration pulsed through the tower stone, harmonizing with the steady attention of the villagers below. It was a quiet reminder that vigilance could exist in silence, sustained by care and presence rather than force. Soft sounds arose from the homes, mothers humming lullabies, children murmuring songs, elders speaking in gentle tones. Even the animals moved with deliberate caution, each step blending into the village's quiet rhythm. Every noise, every gesture, every small act of awareness reinforced the collective web of vigilance that stretched through the streets and fields. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted slowly, patient and observant, aware of the village's presence. They lingered without intrusion, testing the boundary of calm that Hearthwick had created. The night itself seemed to respond to this shared attentiveness, folding into the rhythm rather than pushing against it. Beneath the stars, the village rested, its gentle hum of presence forming a protective rhythm stronger than any bell could have sounded. Night wrapped Hearthwick in a soft, steady calm. Lanterns glimmered along streets and doorways, casting warm, reassuring circles of light that touched cobblestones, cottages, and the dew-damped grass. Shadows pooled gently beneath trees and along fences, softened by the glow, while the fog curled lazily across fields and along the forest edge, moving as if aware of the village's careful rhythm. Mira walked along the main path, lantern held low. Each step pressed into the cool, damp grass, leaving faint impressions that the fog would smooth away. She breathed slowly, tasting the earthy scent of moss, wet soil, and distant hearth smoke. Her heartbeat settled into the rhythm of Hearthwick itself, syncing with the soft hums from cottages, the gentle shuffle of footsteps, and the faint whispers that floated through the streets. Above the village, the cracked bell hung quietly in its tower, a faint glimmer of silver catching the moonlight along its fracture. Though it no longer rang, a subtle vibration hummed through the stone, felt rather than heard, resonating with the steady attentiveness of the village below. It was a quiet pulse, a reminder that vigilance could live in patience and presence. Soft sounds drifted through the night, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders murmuring quietly. Animals moved carefully, their steps deliberate, blending seamlessly into the web of awareness that stretched through the village. Each sound, each motion, reinforced the gentle, protective rhythm that held the night at bay. At the edges of the fog, shadows lingered, observing with patience and restraint. They moved slowly, deliberately, acknowledging the village's careful watch. Hearthwick rested in the gentle strength of shared vigilance, discovering that protection could exist quietly, patiently, and together, woven not from loud alarms, but from presence, care, and the steady, enduring heartbeat of life held in harmony. The night settled over Hearthwick like a slow, deliberate breath, stretching across rooftops, streets, and fields. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their warm light forming gentle, steady circles that met the darkness without confrontation. Shadows pooled softly beneath trees and fences, softened by the glow, while the fog drifted in from the surrounding fields, curling and twisting with patient curiosity. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern swaying gently, its light revealing the soft shimmer of dew on the grass. She inhaled the cool air, tasting the faint scent of moss, wet earth, and distant smoke from hearth fires. Each step pressed softly into the damp ground, leaving fleeting traces that were quickly hidden by the creeping fog. She felt the village's rhythm in every sound, the soft hums from cottages, whispered words, and the deliberate shuffle of careful footsteps. The cracked bell hung silently above, its fracture glinting faintly in the moonlight. Though it could no longer ring fully, a subtle vibration hummed through the stone of the tower, joining the quiet pulse of the village below. It was a soft, enduring reminder that vigilance could exist in subtlety, a presence sustained by attention and care rather than force. From the cottages came gentle sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking in low tones. Even the animals moved with careful awareness, blending into the rhythm of presence. Every noise, every gesture, every small act of attentiveness became part of the village's protective web, stretching across streets, fields, and hearts alike. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted slowly, observing but not intruding. The village's calm, deliberate presence created a subtle boundary, one that the darkness respected. Hearthwick rested within this quiet harmony, its gentle thread of vigilance stronger than any bell could have been, holding the night with patient, shared care. The night deepened further over Hearthwick, carrying a hush that settled softly on rooftops, streets, and fields. Lanterns glimmered steadily, their warm light forming soft pools that reached into the shadows, guiding footsteps and illuminating familiar paths. The fog drifted slowly from the fields, curling around trees, fences, and low stone walls with deliberate, patient movement, as if sensing the quiet rhythm of life below. Myra walked along the path near the tower, lantern swinging lightly. Each step pressed into the damp grass, leaving impressions that disappeared almost immediately. The air was cool and scented with wet earth, moss, and faint smoke from distant hearths. She breathed slowly, letting the calm of the village seep into her chest, feeling the pulse of Hearthwick in the soft hums of cottages, whispered voices, and the gentle shuffle of careful steps. The cracked bell hung above, its surface catching pale moonlight. Though it no longer rang, a subtle vibration hummed through the tower's stone, merging with the rhythm of attentive life below. It was a quiet heartbeat, a reminder that vigilance did not need sound to exist. From cottages drifted soft, deliberate noises, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking low words of care. Even animals moved cautiously, steps blending into the village's quiet rhythm. Each sound reinforced the invisible net of attentiveness that held Hearthwick safely in its gentle grasp. At the fog's edge, shapes lingered, observing patiently, neither approaching nor retreating. The night itself seemed to breathe with the village, responding to its rhythm rather than challenging it. Hearthwick rested in shared vigilance, discovering that protection could exist quietly, patiently, and together, held in the soft, deliberate currents of attention and care. The night in Hearthwick stretched on with a slow, deliberate calm. Lanterns glimmered softly in windows and along streets, their warm light forming gentle circles that met the darkness without aggression. Shadows curled lazily along walls and fences, softened by the lantern glow, while the fog drifted in from the surrounding fields, moving with patient, careful intention. Mira walked near the edge of the village, lantern in hand, its glow brushing the dew-laden grass and illuminating the faint traces of animal tracks. The air was cool and moist, carrying the scent of moss, wet earth, and distant smoke. She breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of the village in every small sound. The hums from cottages, the whispers of villagers, the soft shuffle of careful footsteps along the streets. Above her, the cracked bell hung in quiet repose, catching the moonlight along its thin fracture. Though it no longer rang, a faint hum resonated through the stone tower, blending seamlessly with the subtle rhythm of the village below. Its quiet pulse reminded Mira that vigilance could exist in patience and presence rather than in force. From the cottages rose gentle noises, a mother's lullaby, a child's soft whisper, elders murmuring words of reassurance. Even animals moved cautiously, steps soft and deliberate, blending into the quiet rhythm. Every sound, every movement reinforced the village's protective presence, a network of awareness that stretched across streets, fields, and hearts alike. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted, patient and observant, lingering without intrusion. Hearthwick rested beneath the stars, held in a gentle harmony where vigilance was quiet, care was deliberate, and the cracked bell's song lived on not in sound, but in the rhythm of shared presence. The night wrapped Hearthwick in a slow, deliberate hush, soft as a whispered lullaby. Lanterns glimmered steadily from windows and doorways, their warm light spilling over cobblestones and dew-damp grass, creating gentle pools that met the darkness without confrontation. Shadows curled at the edges of the streets and around fences, softened by the glow, while the fog drifted in from distant fields, curling and twisting with patient, measured motion. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern held low, each step pressed into the cool, wet grass, leaving fleeting impressions that the fog would smooth away. The air was rich with the scent of moss, damp earth, and faint smoke from hearth fires. She inhaled slowly, letting the calm of the village seep into her chest. The rhythm of Hearthwick was in the hums from cottages, the whispered words of villagers, and the deliberate shuffle of careful footsteps along streets and paths. Above her, the cracked bell caught the moonlight in thin, silver lines along its fracture. Though it could no longer ring, a subtle vibration pulsed through the stone tower, felt more than heard. Its gentle hum blended with the quiet rhythm of attentive life below, a soft heartbeat connecting the village and the night. From the cottages arose low hums and whispers, mothers singing lullabies, children murmuring songs, elders speaking quietly to one another. Even the animals moved with care, their steps blending into the gentle rhythm of presence. Each sound, each motion, became part of a protective web that stretched across the village, soft but unbreakable. At the edges of the fog, shadows shifted slowly, observing without intrusion. Hearthwick rested within the slow embrace of shared vigilance, discovering that safety could live not in a ringing bell but in patience, care, and the quiet, enduring rhythm of presence held together across the valley. Night lingered over Hearthwick like a gentle sigh, wrapping the village in quiet calm. Lanterns glimmered softly from windows and doorways, casting warm, steady light across cobblestones and dew-specked grass. Shadows pooled gently beneath trees and fences, softened by the lantern glow, while fog drifted slowly through the fields, curling with deliberate, patient motion, as if it, too, respected the rhythm of life below. Myra walked along the path near the bell tower, lanterns swinging lightly. Each footfall pressed softly into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions that disappeared beneath the advancing mist. She breathed deeply, tasting the faint earthy scent of moss, wet soil, and the distant smoke of hearth fires. Every sound the soft hums from cottages, whispered words, and gentle footsteps threaded together, forming the subtle heartbeat of the village. The cracked bell hung silently above, its fracture catching the moonlight. Though it could no longer ring fully, a faint vibration hummed through the stone of the tower, blending with the gentle rhythm of attentive life below. It was a quiet, enduring pulse, a reminder that vigilance could exist without alarm, nurtured by care and presence rather than force. From cottages came soft sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children murmuring songs, elders speaking quietly. Even animals moved with deliberation, blending seamlessly into the village's careful, attentive rhythm. Each sound, each gentle movement, reinforced the invisible net of presence that held Hearthwick safe. At the edges of the fog, shapes shifted slowly, observing but never intruding. Hearthwick rested beneath the stars, held in a delicate harmony where vigilance was quiet, care was deliberate, and the cracked bell's song lived on not in sound, but in the enduring rhythm of shared presence. The night deepened over Hearthwick, wrapping the village in a gentle, patient quiet. Lanterns glimmered softly from windows and doorways, casting warm, steady pools of light that stretched across cobblestone streets and dew-specked grass. Shadows pooled around trees, fences, and walls, softened by the glow, while fog drifted in from the fields with deliberate, measured motion, curling and shifting as if aware of the calm below. Myra walked near the edge of the village, lanterns swinging lightly. Each step pressed softly into the damp ground, leaving impressions that vanished quickly beneath the creeping mist. She breathed deeply, tasting the cool, earthy scent of moss, wet soil, and faint smoke from distant hearths. Every sound, the hums from cottages, whispers of villagers, the quiet shuffle of careful footsteps wove together into a subtle rhythm, the pulse of life threading through the village. Above, the cracked bell hung silently in its tower, the fracture catching pale moonlight. Though it could no longer ring, a faint vibration hummed through the stone, felt rather than heard, echoing the attentive presence of the villagers below. Its gentle hum spoke of care, vigilance, and quiet endurance. From the cottages drifted low hums and soft whispers, mothers singing lullabies, children murmuring songs, elders speaking quietly. Even animals moved with care, their steps blending into the subtle rhythm of Hearthwick. Every small sound reinforced the village's quiet protective web, holding the night at bay with patient, deliberate presence. At the edges of the fog, shadows lingered, patient and observant, neither pressing forward nor retreating. Hearthwick rested within this calm harmony, discovering that safety could exist, not in force or alarm, but in careful attention, shared vigilance, and the soft, enduring rhythm of life maintained together. Night stretched slowly over Hearthwick, the village wrapped in a soft, deliberate hush. Lanterns glimmered warmly from windows and doorways, casting gentle light across cobblestones, fences, and dew-laden grass. Shadows softened at the edges, curling and stretching like quiet dancers, while fog drifted lazily across the fields, moving with patient deliberation as if it too respected the village's rhythm. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern held low, illuminating the shimmer of dew on grass and leaves. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet earth, moss, and faint smoke from distant hearths. She inhaled deeply, letting the calm of the village settle into her chest. Every sound, the soft hums from cottages, whispered words, and gentle shuffle of careful footsteps was a thread in the rhythm that connected the villagers in quiet vigilance. The cracked bell hung above, its fracture catching slivers of moonlight. Though it could no longer ring, a faint vibration hummed through the tower's stone, blending seamlessly with the pulse of life below. It was a quiet, enduring heartbeat, a subtle reassurance that vigilance could exist without alarm, sustained by attention, care, and shared presence. From cottages rose soft, deliberate noises, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking low words of comfort. Even animals moved carefully, their steps blending into the village's subtle rhythm. Every sound and movement reinforced the invisible web of attentiveness that stretched across Hearthwick, forming a gentle, protective embrace. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted, patient and deliberate, observing without intrusion. The valley seemed to hold its breath, resting in the quiet harmony created by the village's vigilance. Hearthwick slept with calm assurance, learning that safety could exist in patience, attentiveness, and the steady, shared heartbeat of life. The night in Hearthwick deepened gently, stretching its quiet over rooftops, streets, and fields. Lanterns glimmered warmly from windows and doorways, casting soft circles of light across cobblestones and dew-damped grass. Shadows curled and softened around trees, fences, and walls, while the fog drifted in slowly from the distant fields, curling with patient, deliberate motion. Myra walked near the bell tower, lantern swinging lightly, casting a gentle glow over the wet grass and the edges of the path. Each step pressed softly into the earth, leaving faint impressions that disappeared quickly beneath the creeping mist. She inhaled the cool night air, tasting moss, damp soil, and faint smoke from distant hearths. Every small sound, the hums from cottages, whispered words, and careful footsteps wove into the subtle rhythm of the village. A quiet heartbeat felt more than heard. The cracked bell hung above, catching the pale moonlight along its fracture. Though it no longer rang, a faint vibration pulsed through the stone, harmonizing with the soft cadence of attentive life below. Its hum was a quiet reminder that vigilance need not shout, that presence and care could form a protective rhythm just as strong as any bell's toll. From cottages came gentle, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking in low tones. Even the animals moved cautiously, steps blending into the village's soft, shared rhythm. Every sound, every gesture, became part of the protective web that stretched across Hearthwick, quiet yet enduring. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted slowly, observing without intrusion. The village held the night with calm attentiveness, discovering that safety could exist not in alarms or force, but in patience, care, and the slow, steady rhythm of shared presence. The night deepened over Hearthwick, stretching its quiet across the village with a soft, deliberate patience. Lanterns glimmered steadily from windows and doorways, their warm light spilling across cobblestones and dew-kissed grass, illuminating familiar paths while softening shadows. The fog drifted in from the distant fields, curling around fences and trees with measured, careful motion, as if it were aware of the gentle rhythm below. Mira walked near the bell tower, lantern held low, its light brushing over the damp grass and sparkling dew. Each step pressed softly into the earth, leaving fleeting impressions that the fog quickly smoothed away. She breathed in slowly, tasting the cool night air, the mossy scent of the fields, and the faint smoke from distant hearths. The hum of the village's soft voices, whispered songs. Careful footsteps beat in rhythm with her own pulse, forming a slow, steady cadence of presence. The cracked bell hung silently above, catching the pale moonlight along its fracture. Though it could no longer ring fully, a subtle vibration hummed through the stone tower, felt more than heard, joining the quiet chorus of the village's life. Its hum was a gentle reminder that vigilance could exist without alarm, carried instead in awareness, care, and deliberate attention. Soft sounds drifted from the cottages, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly to one another. Even the animals moved with mindful caution, their steps blending seamlessly into the village's rhythm. Every sound, every motion, became part of the protective web that held Hearthwick safe, delicate yet enduring. At the edges of the fog, shadows shifted, patient and observant, lingering without intrusion. Hearthwick rested within this quiet harmony, learning that safety could exist not in noise or force, but in patience, attentiveness, and the slow, enduring pulse of life maintained together under the night sky. The night lay softly over Hearthwick, wrapping the village in calm that seemed almost tangible. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their warm light spreading over cobblestones, fences, and dew-drenched grass, softening shadows rather than chasing them away. The fog drifted in from the surrounding fields with deliberate, patient motion, curling around trees and low stone walls, aware of the quiet rhythm of life below. Myra walked along the path near the bell tower, lanterns swinging lightly, illuminating the shimmer of dew on grass and leaves. Each step pressed gently into the damp ground, leaving fleeting impressions that vanished quickly beneath the creeping mist. She inhaled deeply, the cool air carrying the sense of moss, wet earth, and distant smoke. Around her, the villages pulsed the hums from cottages. Whispered words and soft shuffle of careful footsteps formed a delicate, steady rhythm. Above, the cracked bell caught faint moonlight along its fracture. Though it could no longer ring, a subtle vibration hummed through the stone, joining the quiet cadence of attentive life below. Its gentle resonance was a reminder that vigilance could be quiet, present in the soft, enduring rhythm of awareness shared by the village. From cottages came soft, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly. Even the animals moved with cautious grace, their steps blending into the calm, shared rhythm of Hearthwick. Every noise, every gesture reinforced the invisible network of attentiveness that held the village together. At the fog's edge, shadows lingered, patient and deliberate, observing without intrusion. Hearthwick rested in the gentle strength of shared watchfulness, discovering that protection could exist not in alarms or loud bells, but in patience, presence, and the soft, enduring rhythm of care woven quietly through the night. The night draped over Hearthwick like a soft, careful shawl. Lanterns glimmered steadily from windows and doorways, their warm light spilling onto streets, cobblestones, and dewled-on grass, forming gentle pools that softened shadows rather than banishing them. The fog drifted in from the surrounding fields, curling slowly around fences, trees, and low stone walls, moving with deliberate patience, as if mindful of the rhythm of life below. Myra walked near the bell tower, lantern held low, casting a circle of warm light over the glistening grass and the edges of the path. Each step pressed softly into the damp ground, leaving fleeting impressions that the fog quickly erased. She inhaled deeply, letting the sense of wet earth, moss, and distant smoke drift through her senses. Around her, the village breathed in quiet cadence the soft hums from cottages, whispered words, and the deliberate shuffle of careful footsteps weaving a subtle rhythm through the night. The cracked bell hung silently above, its fracture catching the pale moonlight. Though it could no longer ring fully, a faint vibration hummed through the stone tower, merging with the village's quiet pulse below. Its subtle hum spoke of vigilance, sustained not by noise, but by attention, care, and presence. From cottages arose gentle sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly. Even animals moved softly, their steps blending seamlessly into the village's calm rhythm. Every motion, every sound reinforced the invisible web of attentiveness, holding Hearthwick in gentle protection. At the edges of the fog, shadows shifted slowly, observing patiently, neither pressing forward nor retreating. Hearthwick rested within this quiet thread of shared vigilance, learning that safety could exist not in alarms or force, but in patience, attentiveness, and the enduring, gentle rhythm of life woven together beneath the night sky. The night over Hearthwick was slow, deliberate, and soft, a quiet rhythm that stretched across the village like a gentle song. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their warm light spilling onto streets, stone walls, and dew-drenched grass. Shadows pooled in corners and beneath trees, softened by the glow, while fog drifted in from the distant fields, curling around fences and low stone walls, with careful patience, observing the village without intrusion. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lanterns swinging lightly. Each step pressed into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions that disappeared beneath the creeping mist. She breathed in the cool, moist air, tasting the earthy scent of moss, wet soil, and the faint smoke of hearth fires. Every sound, the hums from cottages, whispered words, the soft shuffle of careful steps joined a subtle, steady pulse that flowed through the streets, connecting every heart in the village. The cracked bell hung above, catching faint moonlight along its fracture. Though it no longer rang, a gentle vibration hummed through the stone of the tower, blending seamlessly with the soft rhythm of attentive life below. Its quiet hum reminded Myra that vigilance did not require alarm. It existed in presence, care, and shared awareness. From cottages drifted low, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly. Even the animals moved cautiously, blending into the village's quiet rhythm. Every small motion, every gentle noise, reinforced the invisible web of vigilance that stretched across Hearthwick, forming a soft but enduring protective embrace. At the edges of the fog, shadows shifted, patient and observant. The village rested beneath the stars, held in a gentle harmony where safety was born, not from sound or force, but from patience, attentiveness, and the quiet, steady hum of life maintained together. The night in Hearthwick moved like a soft, measured breath, wrapping the village in calm and quiet. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their warm light forming gentle circles over cobblestones, fences, and dew-specked grass. Shadows curled and softened in the glow, while fog drifted slowly across the fields, curling with deliberate patience as if it, too, were listening to the rhythm of life below. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lanterns swinging lightly. Each step pressed into the damp earth, leaving fleeting impressions that disappeared beneath the advancing mist. She inhaled deeply, tasting the mossy, earthy scent of the fields and the faint smoke from distant hearths. Every small sound, the hums of cottages, whispered conversations, the careful shuffle of footsteps, formed a quiet, steady pulse that connected the village in gentle vigilance. Above, the cracked bell hung silently, its fracture catching the pale moonlight. Though it could no longer ring fully, a subtle vibration hummed through the stone tower, felt rather than heard, blending with the soft rhythm of attentive life below. Its quiet resonance reminded Mira that vigilance could exist in stillness, sustained by awareness, care, and presence rather than sound. From cottages came gentle, deliberate noises, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly. Even the animals moved with careful grace, blending seamlessly into the shared rhythm of the village. Every gesture, every sound reinforced the protective web that held Hearthwick together. At the edges of the fog, shadows lingered, observing patiently. Hearthwick rested within this quiet harmony, discovering that safety could exist not in alarms or force, but in patience, attentiveness, and the slow, enduring rhythm of life maintained together beneath the night sky. Night hung over Hearthwick like a gentle, patient sigh, folding the village into calm and stillness. Lanterns glimmered steadily from windows and doorways, casting warm, comforting pools of light over cobblestones, fences, and dew-laden grass. Shadows pooled in soft, softened corners, and the fog drifted in from the fields, curling around trees and low stone walls with careful, deliberate motion. Observing without intrusion, Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern held low. Each step pressed softly into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions quickly swallowed by the creeping mist. The air was cool and carried the scent of wet earth, moss, and the faint smoke from distant hearth fires. She inhaled slowly, letting the calm of the village fill her chest, sinking with the quiet pulse of life around her. The hums from cottages, whispered words, and the subtle shuffle of attentive footsteps. The cracked bell hung silently above, catching slivers of moonlight along its fracture. Though it could no longer ring, a faint vibration hummed through the tower's stone, merging with the village's quiet rhythm below. Its hum was a soft reminder that vigilance could exist in stillness, supported by awareness and shared care rather than sound. From cottages drifted gentle noises, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly to one another. Even animals moved softly, blending seamlessly into the village's rhythm. Every small sound, every deliberate motion reinforced the invisible network of attentiveness, a quiet protection that held Hearthwick safely through the night. At the edges of the fog, shadows shifted slowly, patient and observant. Hearthwick rested within this gentle harmony, learning that safety could exist not in alarms or force, but in patience, attentiveness, and the enduring, shared rhythm of life beneath the night sky. The night over Hearthwick carried a deep, unhurried calm. Lanterns glimmered warmly from windows and doorways, casting gentle pools of light across cobblestones, fences, and doodled grass. Shadows curled softly at the edges, softened by the glow, while fog drifted slowly in from the surrounding fields, curling and twisting with deliberate patience, as if it, too, respected the village's quiet rhythm. Mira walked near the bell tower, lantern held low. Each step pressed softly into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions that the fog erased almost immediately. The air was cool, scented with wet earth, moss, and faint smoke from distant hearths. Every sound, the hums from cottages, whispered conversations, and soft shuffle of careful footsteps formed a subtle, steady pulse that connected the village, weaving a quiet, shared vigilance throughout Hearthwick. Above, the cracked bell caught faint moonlight along its fracture, though it no longer rang fully. A gentle vibration hummed through the stone tower, blending with the rhythm of attentive life below. Its soft resonance reminded Myra that protection did not require noise. It could exist in patient awareness, careful attention, and shared presence. From cottages drifted quiet, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking low words of care. Even animals moved with mindful steps, blending into the village's gentle rhythm. Each sound, each motion reinforced the invisible web of attentiveness, forming a protective embrace that held the village safely in the night. At the fog's edge, shadows lingered, patient and deliberate, observing without intrusion. Hearthwick rested in the calm strength of shared vigilance, discovering that safety could exist, not in alarms or loud bells, but in patience, presence, and the soft, enduring rhythm of life held together beneath the stars. The night draped itself over Hearthwick like a slow, deliberate sigh. Lanterns glimmered warmly from windows and doorways, casting gentle circles of light over streets, cobblestones, and dew-drenched grass. Shadows pooled softly beneath trees and along fences, softened by the glow, while fog drifted in from the fields, curling with careful patience as if it, too, were listening to the village's quiet rhythm. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern held low. illuminating the glistening dew and the soft edges of the path. Each step pressed lightly into the damp earth, leaving fleeting traces that the mist quickly swallowed. She inhaled deeply, tasting the cool night air, the faint scent of moss, wet soil, and distant hearth smoke. Every sound, the hums of cottages, whispered conversations, the gentle shuffle of careful footsteps, wove together in a subtle, steady pulse, the heartbeat of the village alive in stillness. Above her, the cracked bell hung silently, its fracture catching thin lines of moonlight. Though it could no longer ring fully, a soft vibration hummed through the stone, felt rather than heard, blending with the quiet rhythm of attentive life below. Its presence was a gentle reassurance. Vigilance could exist without noise, sustained through care and shared awareness. From cottages drifted soft, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly. Even animals moved with careful grace, their steps blending into the village's calm, patient rhythm. Each sound, each motion reinforced the invisible web of attentiveness that stretched across Hearthwick, forming a soft but enduring protective embrace. At the edges of the fog, shadows lingered, patient and observant. Hearthwick rested within this gentle harmony, learning that safety could exist, not in alarms or force, but in patience, attentiveness, and the quiet, enduring rhythm of shared life beneath the night sky. Night hung over Hearthwick like a soft, patient sigh, wrapping the village in quiet calm. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their warm light forming gentle pools across cobblestones, fences, and dew-damp grass. Shadows curled softly at the edges, softened by the glow, while fog drifted slowly in from the surrounding fields, curling around trees and low stone walls with deliberate patience, as though respecting the careful rhythm of life below. Myra walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern swaying lightly. Each step pressed softly into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions that the fog quickly erased. She breathed deeply, tasting the faintly earthy scent of moss, wet soil, and distant smoke from hearths. Around her, the village's subtle rhythmed hums from cottages, whispered conversations, and soft shuffle of footsteps created a quiet pulse, a steady heartbeat threading the lives of all who watched through the night. Above her, the cracked bell hung silently, its fracture catching pale moonlight. Though it could no longer ring, a faint vibration hummed through the tower stone, joining the rhythm of attentive life below. Its gentle hum reminded Mira that vigilance could exist without alarm, carried in the careful attention and shared presence of the village. From cottages came soft, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly to one another. Even the animals moved with mindful care, steps blending into the village's shared rhythm. Every gesture, every sound reinforced the invisible network of attentiveness, forming a protective embrace that held Hearthwick in gentle safety. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted slowly, observing patiently. Hearthwick rested in this quiet harmony, discovering that safety could exist not in bells or alarms, but in patience, attentiveness, and the slow, enduring rhythm of life sustained together beneath the night sky. The night in Hearthwick stretched like a gentle, deliberate breath, quiet and patient. Lanterns glimmered softly from windows and doorways, their warm light spilling over streets, fences, and dew-drenched grass, forming soft pools that softened shadows rather than banishing them. The fog drifted in from the fields, curling and twisting with careful, deliberate motion, as if it, too, were mindful of the rhythm of life below. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lantern swinging lightly. Each step pressed into the damp grass, leaving fleeting impressions that disappeared beneath the creeping mist. The air was cool, scented faintly with moss, wet earth, and distant hearth smoke. She inhaled slowly, letting the calm of the village settle into her chest. Every sound, the hums from cottages, whispered words, and the careful shuffle of footsteps threaded together, forming a gentle, steady pulse that connected the village in quiet, shared vigilance. The cracked bell hung above, its fracture catching the moonlight in thin silver lines. Though it could no longer ring, a subtle vibration hummed through the tower stone, merging with the pulse of life below. Its quiet resonance reminded Myra that protection could exist in stillness, carried in attentiveness, care, and shared presence rather than sound. From cottages drifted soft, deliberate noises, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly to one another. Even the animals moved with cautious grace, blending into the village's gentle rhythm. Every motion, every sound reinforced the invisible web of attentiveness, forming a protective embrace around Hearthwick. At the fog's edge, shadows lingered, patient and observant. Hearthwick rested within this calm, shared harmony, discovering that safety could exist not in alarms or loud bells, but in patience, presence, and the enduring, gentle rhythm of life held together beneath the stars. Night lay over Hearthwick with a soft, deliberate calm, stretching across the village like a quiet sigh. Lanterns glimmered from windows and doorways, their warm light spilling over cobblestones, fences, and dew-covered grass. Shadows pooled softly at the edges, softened by the glow, while the fog drifted slowly in from distant fields, curling around trees and low stone walls with careful, patient motion, as if it, too, were mindful of the rhythm below. Mira walked along the path near the bell tower, lanterns swaying gently, casting a circle of warm light on the damp grass and the edges of the path. Each step pressed softly into the earth, leaving fleeting impressions that vanished beneath the creeping mist. She inhaled deeply, tasting the cool, earthy scent of moss, wet soil, and faint smoke from distant hearths. Every sound, the hums from cottages, whispered words, and careful shuffle of steps wove together into the subtle, steady pulse of the village, a quiet heartbeat shared by all who watched. Above her, the cracked bell hung silently, its fracture catching the pale moonlight. Though it could no longer ring, a faint vibration hummed through the tower stone, merging seamlessly with the gentle rhythm of attentive life below. Its quiet resonance reminded Myra that vigilance could exist without noise, sustained by awareness, care, and shared presence. From cottages drifted soft, deliberate sounds, mothers humming lullabies, children whispering songs, elders speaking quietly. Even animals moved carefully, their steps blending into the village's calm, deliberate rhythm. Each gesture, each noise, reinforced the invisible web of attentiveness that held Hearthwick safely through the night. At the fog's edge, shadows shifted slowly, patient and observant, neither intruding nor retreating. Hearthwick rested within this gentle, enduring harmony, learning that protection could exist not in alarms or force, but in patience, attentiveness, and the quiet, steady pulse of life maintained together beneath the night sky. The first hints of dawn brushed the edges of the sky, soft and muted, painting pale streaks of rose and silver over Hearthwick. Lanterns glimmered for the last time as the gentle light of morning began to fill the village, touching rooftops, cobblestones, and dewladen grass. Shadows receded slowly, softened and stretched, while the fog began to lift, curling back into the fields like a retreating tide. Myra stood near the bell tower, taking in the quiet of the awakening village. The cracked bell hung above, catching the morning light along its fracture. Though it no longer rang, its subtle hum from the night before lingered in memory, a gentle reminder of the village's vigilance, care, and shared attention. Hearthwick had survived the darkness not through the clamor of a bell, but through the patient presence of every living soul that had watched, whispered, and breathed in harmony with one another. The cottages stirred softly, mothers adjusting blankets, children stretching and yawning, elders beginning their morning routines. Even the animals moved with cautious ease, stepping carefully through dew-slick grass and soft paths. The village exhaled as one, a collective breath of relief and quiet joy. Above it all, the cracked bell glinted in the morning sun, a silent witness to the night past. Hearthwick had learned that true strength was gentle, enduring, and shared. Vigilance was a soft thread connecting hearts, a rhythm stronger than fear, louder than any bell, and unbroken by shadow or fog. The village now rested in the quiet light of dawn, a calm resilience woven into every stone, every path, and every heartbeat. Thank you for joining this journey through Hearthwick. As the village greets the dawn, let yourself rest in the calm rhythm of care and shared presence. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and feel the quiet strength that lives in patience, attentiveness, and gentle connection. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, whether it's the US, Europe, Canada, or elsewhere. Your support helps these tales of calm, wonder, and quiet strength continue. Good night, and may your rest be as gentle and enduring as the village of Hearthwick.